The massive space station called Concordia Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most planets, with silver towers that stretched for miles. Ships from 12 different alien races docked at its ports every day. Today was different, though. Today, the Galactic Council was angry. Ambassador Zethkar walked into the great meeting hall. His forearms moved with practiced grace as he carried data tablets. His people, the hegemony, had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They were tall, with gray skin that looked like stone and eyes that glowed red in the dim light. Other council members were already seated in their floating chairs around the circular room. The Althari representative sat quietly, her blue skin shimmering under the lights. The insect-like Vextai clicked their mandibles nervously. Representatives from 10 other ancient races waited in silence. All of them had one thing in common today. They were all worried about the same problem: humans. Council members, Zethkar began, his voice echoing through the hall. We have a serious situation. The species from the planet Earth continues to ignore our laws. A holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed star maps with red dots scattered across several solar systems. Each red dot was a human colony. In the past year, humans have built 17 new colonies without permission, Zethkar continued. They have developed weapons we did not approve. They have made ships that use technology they refuse to share. They act like they own the galaxy. Murmurs of agreement came from around the room. The Althari representative, Sil Nara, spoke up. My people have monitored their expansion. They build faster than any species we have seen. Their technology grows at an impossible rate. The door to the chamber opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked in, representing Earth. She was small compared to the other beings in the room, with dark hair tied back and wearing a simple blue uniform. The other ambassadors looked at her like she was a child who had wandered into an adult conversation. Ambassador Chen, Zethkar said, not bothering to hide his annoyance. How nice of you to join us. We were just discussing your species' latest violations of galactic law. Sarah took her seat at the small desk reserved for Earth. It was positioned lower than the others. A not-so-subtle reminder of humanity's junior status. I'm here to listen and respond to any concerns the Council might have. Zethkar activated another hologram. This one showed images of human ships that looked nothing like traditional Council designs. Where Council ships were large and decorated with symbols of their builders, human ships were sleek and simple. They looked dangerous. Your people have built warships without Council approval, Zethkar accused. You have settled worlds in restricted zones. You have made contact with species we specifically told you to avoid. Do you have anything to say about this? Sarah stood up slowly. The colonies you mention are on worlds that were empty. We harmed no one by settling there. As for our ships, humans have the right to defend ourselves. And the species we contacted reached out to us first. A sound like grinding stone came from several council members. It was how they showed displeasure. The Vextai representative, Hivemind Zaxthal, spoke in their buzzing voice. Young species do not understand the dangers of uncontrolled expansion. This is why the Council exists, to guide, to protect. Protect who? Sarah asked. You've kept dozens of species locked in their home systems for centuries. You decide who can travel, who can trade, who can grow. Maybe some species don't want your protection. The room fell silent. No one had spoken to the Council like this in 5,000 years. Zethkar's red eyes blazed brighter. Humans are too young to understand the complexity of galactic civilization. You are too aggressive, too unpredictable. You cannot be trusted with unrestricted access to space. Sarah felt her heart beating faster, but she kept her voice calm. And who made you the judges of that? What gives you the right to cage entire civilizations? Experience, Silnara said softly. We have maintained peace for millennia. Before the Council, the galaxy was chaos, wars that lasted centuries, entire species extinct. We learned from those mistakes. By making sure no one else gets the chance to learn for themselves? Sarah shot back. Zethkar had heard enough. He activated the voting system. 12 lights appeared around the room, one for each council member. All in favor of formal censure of the human species? 11 lights turned red immediately. Only the light for the neutral zone representative, a quiet species called the Keepers, remained yellow. The motion passes, Zethkar announced. Effective immediately, humanity is forbidden from expanding beyond their home solar system. All existing colonies will be placed under hegemony oversight for guided development. Human ships will be limited to patrol vessels only. Trade with non-council species is forbidden. Sarah felt the weight of the decision hit her. They were trying to put humanity in a cage. The people of Earth will not accept these restrictions. They will have no choice, Zethkar replied. Economic sanctions begin today. Any human ship found outside your system will be escorted back. Any colony that resists oversight will lose all supply shipments. Your species will learn to follow council law, or you will learn what isolation truly means. Sarah looked around the room at the faces of beings who had just decided humanity's fate without caring about human input. You're making a mistake. Humans don't respond well to threats. Zethkar made the sound his people used for laughter. It was cold and harsh. Child species often think they are stronger than they are. Reality will teach you otherwise. The council session ended with the sound of chairs moving and quiet conversations. Sarah remained seated as the other ambassadors filed out. Several of them glanced at her with what might have been sympathy, but none spoke to her. As she finally stood to leave, Silnara approached her. The Althari ambassador's voice was barely a whisper. Your people should be careful. The council has never been successfully defied. Never. Sarah met her eyes. There's a first time for everything. She walked out of the chamber and toward her ship, knowing that she carried news that would change everything. The council thought they could control humanity with sanctions and threats. They had no idea what humans were capable of when their freedom was threatened. Back in the council chamber, Zethkar reviewed the vote results with satisfaction. Another young species would learn their place. It had always worked before. Economic pressure, followed by isolation, followed by submission. The pattern had been repeated dozens of times over the millennia. What the council didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario since the day they first met alien life. While other species had spent centuries following council rules and accepting council limitations, humans had spent their time learning, building, and planning. The message Sarah sent back to Earth was simple. They said no. Execute Plan Defiance. On Earth, President Martinez read the message and nodded. Humanity had hoped for acceptance, but they had prepared for rejection. Deep in hidden facilities around the solar system, construction projects that had been running for months went into full production mode. The council wanted to cage humanity. They were about to learn that some cages were not strong enough to hold what they were meant to contain. 6 months had passed since the council issued their sanctions against humanity. Zethkar stood in the monitoring center of Concordia Prime, staring at displays that showed the same troubling pattern week after week. The sanctions were not working. Report, he commanded the technician at the nearest console. The being was a hegemony junior officer with pale gray skin and nervous mannerisms. Sir, the humans continue to ignore all restrictions. We have confirmed the establishment of 4 new colonies in the past month alone. Their supply ships continue to operate normally. Our economic blockade appears to have had no effect. Zethkar's red eyes dimmed with thought. This was not how things were supposed to go. Young species always submitted when faced with council pressure. It had worked for thousands of years. What about our patrol ships? Are they not intercepting human vessels? The technician's skin grew even paler. That's the problem, sir. We've lost contact with 7 patrol groups in the past 2 months. Their last transmissions were normal, then nothing. No distress signals, no wreckage, no trace. Across the monitoring center, other technicians were reporting similar problems. Council ships would approach human space, report normal conditions, then simply vanish. Search teams found nothing. It was as if the ships had never existed. Admiral Vorthak entered the monitoring center, his heavy footsteps echoing off the metal floor. He was the greatest military commander in hegemony history, with victories spanning 3 centuries. His presence usually brought confidence to any room. Today he looked troubled. Zethkar, he said in his deep voice, we need to discuss the human situation. They moved to a private conference room where holographic displays showed the current state of human space. What they saw was impossible according to everything the council knew about young species development. Their expansion rate has increased, not decreased, Admiral Vorthak reported. Intelligence suggests they now have over 50 colonies across 17 systems. Our analysts estimate their population growth and resource extraction capabilities have tripled in 6 months. How is that possible? Zethkar demanded. We cut off all trade. We restricted their access to advanced materials. They should be struggling to maintain what they already had. Admiral Vorthak manipulated the display to show ship movement patterns. They're getting resources from somewhere. Our best guess is they've made contact with multiple non-Council species. The Zalani cluster has gone completely dark to our communications. The frontier worlds have stopped responding to Council directives. Something is happening out there. Zethkar studied the patterns on the display. Red lines showed human ship movements spreading like a web across previously empty space. Blue lines showed where Council patrol ships had vanished. The two patterns overlapped in disturbing ways. What about their technology? Zethkar asked. Are they still using primitive human designs? That's another problem, Admiral Vorthak admitted. Our few successful reconnaissance missions report seeing ships that don't match any known human designs. They appear to be using technology that our scientists say should be impossible for a species their age. A communication alert chimed through the room. The display showed an incoming priority message from the Althari homeworld. Silnara's face appeared, her blue skin darker than usual with stress. Zethkar, she said without preamble, we have a situation. 3 of our outer colonies have requested permission to begin trade negotiations with human representatives. They say the humans are offering technology and resources we cannot provide. Absolutely not, Zethkar replied immediately. The sanctions apply to all Council species. No trade with humans. That's just it, Silnara continued. The colonies are threatening to leave the Council if we don't allow the negotiations. They say they're tired of waiting centuries for permission to upgrade their infrastructure, when the humans can provide what they need immediately. After the call ended, Zethkar and Admiral Vorthak sat in silence. This was unprecedented. Council member species asking to break sanctions, colonies threatening to leave the Council. It went against 5,000 years of galactic order. There's something else, Admiral Vorthak said finally. Our listening posts report strange energy signatures coming from human space. The patterns don't match any known technology, but they suggest massive construction projects. Construction of what? We don't know, but the energy output is enormous. Whatever they're building, it's big. Zethkar activated his personal communicator and sent a priority message to all Council members. An emergency session was needed. The human problem was growing beyond anything they had planned for. 2 days later, the full Council assembled again. This time, the mood was very different from their confident vote 6 months earlier. Reports came in from all over the galaxy. Human ships spotted in previously unexplored regions. Council colonies asking uncomfortable questions about trade restrictions. Patrol ships continuing to vanish without explanation. The Vextai representative, Hivemind Zaxthol, buzzed nervously. Our Hivemind networks report increasing unrest among younger generations. They ask why humans can explore freely while we must ask permission for everything. Representative Cordan of the Ancient Arcani spoke in his slow, deliberate way. For the first time in memory, species are questioning Council authority. This cannot be allowed to continue. Zethkar looked around the room at faces that had once been confident in their power. Now they looked worried, uncertain. Admiral Vorthak, what military options do we have? Limited, the Admiral admitted. We don't know the true extent of human capabilities. Our intelligence gathering has been unsuccessful. We know they have more ships than before, but not how many. We know their technology has advanced, but not how far. The Keeper representative, who rarely spoke, surprised everyone by standing. Perhaps it is time to consider that our approach has failed. The humans are not behaving like other young species. Maybe they cannot be controlled the way we have controlled others. A shocked silence filled the room. The Keepers had supported Council decisions for millennia. Their suggestion of failure was unthinkable. No, Zethkar said firmly. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 5,000 years. We will not be defeated by one stubborn species. Admiral, begin preparations for a show of force. Assemble a fleet large enough to make the humans understand their position. Admiral Vorthak nodded, though his expression remained troubled. How large a fleet? All of it, Zethkar replied. Every ship we can spare from every member species. The humans will see the full might of the Council and finally understand that resistance is futile. As the Council members left to prepare for what they hoped would be the final solution to the human problem, none of them noticed the small listening device attached under the conference table. It was no bigger than a grain of sand, made from materials that didn't register on Council sensors. Far away in human space, technicians received every word of the Council's plans. The information was immediately forwarded to the project directors working in the hidden shipyards that the Council still knew nothing about. Humanity had spent 6 months not just building ships, but preparing for exactly this moment. The Council thought they were dealing with a stubborn young species. They had no idea they were about to face something the galaxy had never seen before. The transmission ended with a simple message sent on encrypted channels throughout human space. They're coming with everything they have. Time to show them everything we have. In shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and behind gas giant moons, the final construction phases began. Humanity had used the past 6 months well. While the Council thought they were applying pressure, humans had been learning from every encounter, studying every Council ship that approached their space, reverse engineering every piece of technology they could find. The Council was about to discover that isolation worked both ways. While they had been cut off from human development, humans had been free to develop without Council oversight for the first time in their spacefaring history. The result was going to surprise everyone. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of human space. Over 10,000 ships from 7 different Council species formed a massive armada that stretched across light years. At its center flew the command ship Eternal Order, a vessel so large it had its own gravity and atmosphere. Admiral Vorthak stood on the bridge, studying tactical displays that showed the approaching deadline. 30 days ago, the Council had issued their final ultimatum to humanity: surrender all off-world colonies and submit to Council authority, or face the consequences. The deadline had passed 12 hours ago with no response from Earth. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving no transmissions from human space. No surrender offers, no negotiations, nothing. Admiral Vorthak was not surprised. In 3 centuries of military service, he had learned to read the psychology of his enemies. Humans had shown no signs of backing down during 6 months of sanctions. They would not surrender now just because of a deadline. Begin the advance, he ordered. All ships proceed toward the Sol system. Maintain formation and be ready for anything. The massive fleet began to move. Ships that had never worked together before formed precise formations. Hegemony dreadnoughts with their angular gray hulls led the way. Althari cruisers with their flowing blue designs followed. Fextai swarm ships buzzed around the larger vessels like angry insects. The combined firepower was enough to destroy entire planets. As they moved deeper into what the Council considered human territory, Admiral Vorthak reviewed intelligence reports. Human colonies had gone completely silent 3 days ago. No communication, no ship movements, nothing. It was as if the entire human civilization had simply stopped. Sir, the sensor officer called out, we're detecting some unusual readings ahead. Define unusual, Admiral Vorthak replied. Energy signatures that don't match any known technology. They're faint, but they're spread across a wide area. Admiral Vorthak studied the sensor display. The readings were scattered throughout the system, but they formed a pattern. It looked almost like a defensive network, but the energy signatures were unlike anything in Council databases. Could it be mines or automated weapons? He asked. Unknown, sir. The signatures are too faint to identify, but they're definitely artificial. The fleet continued its advance. As they passed the outer planets of the Sol system, more unusual readings appeared. Whatever the humans had been building during their months of silence, it was extensive. Admiral, the communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through. The main display activated, showing Ambassador Sarah Chen. She was standing in what looked like a military command center, with displays and personnel visible behind her. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful. Admiral Vorthak, she said, I assume you're here because we didn't respond to your ultimatum. Ambassador Chen, Admiral Vorthak replied, your time has run out. The Council offers one final chance for peaceful surrender. Stand down your defenses and prepare to receive Council oversight personnel. Sarah's expression didn't change. You know, Admiral, 6 months ago I warned the Council that humans don't respond well to threats. I told them they were making a mistake. I don't think anyone listened. Your warnings were noted, Admiral Vorthak said. Your response has also been noted. Prepare for the consequences. Actually, Sarah said, I think it's time for the Council to face some consequences of their own. You've spent 5,000 years telling younger species that they're too primitive, too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted with freedom. Maybe it's time someone showed you what unpredictable really looks like. She gestured to someone off-screen. "Admiral, meet the human race." The sensor displays on Admiral Vorthak's bridge suddenly exploded with contacts. What had been empty space moments before now showed thousands of energy signatures. Ships appeared from nowhere as if they had been hiding behind invisible barriers. "Report," Admiral Vorthak shouted. "Sir, we have massive contacts appearing throughout the system," the sensor officer replied, his voice rising with panic. "Estimated count is—" "Sir, this can't be right." "What's the count?" "Over 15,000 ships, sir. And they're still appearing." Admiral Vorthak stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human fleet wasn't just larger than his own. It was larger than anything that should have been possible for a species that had been in space for less than a century. "What kind of ships are they?" he demanded. "Unknown design, sir. They don't match any human ships in our databases. They're unlike anything we've ever seen." On the main display, Ambassador Chen smiled. "You spent so much time watching our old colonies and counting our old ships. You never noticed what we were really building. While you were arguing about sanctions, we were learning. While you were making threats, we were preparing." Admiral Vorthak activated his fleet communications. "All ships, battle stations, prepare for engagement." "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the chaos on his bridge. "You might want to look more carefully at what you're facing before you make any decisions you can't take back." Admiral Vorthak focused on the tactical display. The human ships were moving into formation with a precision that suggested advanced coordination technology. They moved like a single organism, each ship perfectly positioned relative to every other ship. It was unlike anything in his military experience, but it was the ships themselves that truly disturbed him. Where Council ships were built for specific purposes, some for heavy assault, others for speed, others for defense, the human ships seemed to be built for all purposes at once. They were sleek and predatory-looking, with designs that seemed to bend light around them. "Sir," the sensor officer reported, "we're detecting some kind of new shielding technology. Our sensors can't get accurate readings on their capabilities." "And sir," the communications officer added, "we're receiving thousands of individual ship IDs from the human fleet. They all have names like Freedom's Price and Never Again and Council's Mistake." Admiral Vorthak realized he was seeing something that had never existed before in galactic history. A fleet built not for conquest or exploration, but specifically to fight the Council itself. Every ship name, every formation choice, every tactical decision was designed to send a message. "Ambassador Chen," he said, "you cannot hope to defeat the combined might of 7 Council species. Surrender now and your people will be treated with mercy." Sarah's smile became sad. "Admiral, you still don't understand. This isn't about defeating anyone. This is about making sure you never threaten human freedom again. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when you try to cage us. Take a good look." The human fleet completed its formation. Ships stretched in every direction as far as sensors could detect. The Council fleet, for all its size and power, was completely surrounded. Admiral Vorthak had fought in hundreds of battles across 3 centuries. He had faced desperate enemies, overwhelming odds, and impossible situations. But he had never faced anything like this. The humans hadn't just built a fleet to match the Council. They had built a fleet to make the Council irrelevant. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "I recommend we open negotiations." For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vorthak found himself agreeing. The battle hadn't even started, but it was already over. The question now was, what kind of galaxy would exist when it ended? On Earth, President Martinez watched the displays showing both fleets facing each other in space. Humanity had spent every resource, every brilliant mind, every innovative idea on this moment. They had built not just ships, but a message that the entire galaxy would understand. The age of Council dominance was ending. What came next would be up to everyone willing to choose freedom over security, growth over stagnation, and hope over fear. The communication channel remained open between the 2 fleets. The next word spoken would determine the future of galactic civilization. The space between the 2 massive fleets crackled with tension. Admiral Vorthak studied the tactical displays that showed impossible numbers. 15,000 human ships surrounded his force of 10,000 Council vessels. The numbers alone should have decided the battle. But what truly concerned him were the energy readings his sensors couldn't properly identify. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the human ships are moving into attack formation. But sir, their movement patterns are unlike anything we've seen. They're coordinating as if they share a single mind. Admiral Vorthak watched as the human fleet flowed like liquid mercury, each ship adjusting its position in perfect harmony with thousands of others. No communication delays, no formation errors, no individual ship falling out of line. It was coordination that went beyond advanced technology. It was almost supernatural. Begin scanning for their command ship, he ordered. There must be a central coordinator directing this kind of precision. Sir, the sensor officer replied. That's the problem. We can't identify a command structure. Every ship appears to be operating independently, yet they're coordinated perfectly. It's as if each ship knows what every other ship is thinking. On the main display, Ambassador Sarah Chen watched the confusion on Admiral Vorthak's face. You're wondering how we're doing this, aren't you? How 15,000 ships can move as one without any apparent command structure. The thought had occurred to me, Admiral Vorthak replied, trying to maintain his composure. It's simple, Sarah explained. We learned something during these past months that the Council never understood. When you give people freedom instead of orders, when you trust them instead of controlling them, amazing things become possible. Every human ship captain out there knows exactly what needs to be done because they all chose to be here for the same reason. Admiral Vorthak felt a chill run through him. In all his military experience, he had commanded through discipline, hierarchy, and precise orders. The idea of coordination through shared purpose was alien to him. Admiral, Sarah continued, I'm going to offer you something the Council never offered humanity, a choice. You can order your ships to attack and we will defend ourselves, or you can listen to what we really want. Your surrender demands are already known, Admiral Vorthak replied. We're not demanding surrender, Sarah said, surprising him. We're demanding recognition. Humanity wants the right to exist as free beings, to explore the galaxy without asking permission, to trade with whoever we choose, and to defend ourselves against any threat. We don't want to conquer the Council. We want the Council to leave us alone. Admiral Vorthak processed this unexpected offer. And if the Council refuses? Then we'll make sure every species in the galaxy knows what choice means, Sarah replied. Your fleet represents the old way of thinking, the idea that some species are qualified to make decisions for others. Our fleet represents something new, the idea that freedom is worth fighting for. On the Council command ship, urgent messages were coming in from across the galaxy. Dozens of species were monitoring the confrontation, waiting to see which side would prove stronger. The outcome of this battle would determine whether the Council system survived or collapsed entirely. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmission requests from the Zalani cluster, the Frontier Worlds, and 17 other independent systems. They all want to speak with human representatives. Admiral Vorthak realized that the battle had already expanded beyond the two fleets facing each other. The entire galaxy was watching, and many species were clearly hoping for a human victory. Sir, the tactical officer said, I'm detecting a change in the human fleet formation. Sir, they're revealing something. The holographic display, updated to show what was happening, in the space around Earth. The human ships, that had seemed to appear from nowhere, were now moving aside to reveal even larger structures. Massive installations that had been hidden behind some kind of cloaking technology became visible. Those are shipyards, Admiral Vorthak said in disbelief. How many ships can they build? Based on the size of those facilities, the tactical officer calculated, they could construct fleets larger than our entire combined navy. And sir, based on the energy readings, they're already working at full capacity. Sarah's voice came through the communication channel again. You see, Admiral, you made a mistake when you tried to isolate humanity. You gave us 6 months to work without Council oversight. 6 months to learn from every ship that approached our space. To reverse engineer every piece of technology we could find. To build everything we needed to ensure our freedom. Impossible, Admiral Vorthak said. No species develops that quickly. Most species don't, Sarah agreed. Most species spend their time following Council rules, asking Council permission, waiting for Council approval. When you don't have those restrictions, when every human scientist and engineer is working toward the same goal with unlimited resources and complete freedom to innovate, progress happens very quickly. Admiral Vorthak was beginning to understand the scope of the disaster he was facing. The Council hadn't just failed to control humanity. They had accidentally created exactly the kind of free-thinking, rapidly advancing civilization they had spent millennia preventing. "Admiral," Sarah said, "I'm going to demonstrate something for you. Watch carefully." A single human ship broke away from the massive fleet and moved toward the Council formation. As it approached, Admiral Vorthak's sensors tried to lock onto it, but the readings kept shifting. The ship seemed to phase in and out of normal space. "What kind of propulsion system is that?" he demanded. "Something we developed based on quantum theories your scientists abandoned centuries ago," Sarah replied. "When you spend all your time maintaining existing technology instead of pushing boundaries, you miss a lot of possibilities." The human ship stopped just outside weapons range of the Council fleet. Suddenly, it simply vanished. Not destroyed, not hidden behind stealth technology. It was simply gone from all sensors. "Where did it go?" Admiral Vorthak asked. "Behind you," Sarah replied. Admiral Vorthak spun around to see the same ship materialize directly behind his command vessel, well within the protective formation of his fleet. His shields hadn't detected it, his sensors showed no approach, and his weapons had no chance to respond. The ship vanished again and reappeared in its original position with the human fleet. "That was just one ship," Sarah said. "Would you like to see what 15,000 ships can do with that technology?" Admiral Vorthak felt something he hadn't experienced in 3 centuries of military service. Fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of facing something completely beyond his understanding. "What are your terms?" he asked. "Recognition of human independence," Sarah replied immediately. "Complete withdrawal of all Council restrictions on human space. The right to free trade with any species that chooses to trade with us. And a formal apology for trying to cage an entire civilization. And in return, humanity leaves the Council species alone. We don't interfere with your internal affairs. We don't threaten your territories, and we don't try to impose our values on your people. All we want is the same consideration in return." Admiral Vorthak looked around his bridge at officers who were all waiting for his decision. Behind them, through the massive windows of the command ship, the human fleet stretched to the horizon. Ships that represented a level of technology and coordination that made the Council's greatest achievements look primitive. "I don't have the authority to accept those terms," he said finally. "Then get someone who does," Sarah replied. "We'll wait." "But Admiral, while you're discussing this with the Council, remember that the entire galaxy is watching. Every species that has ever chafed under Council restrictions is seeing what's possible when someone says no to absolute authority." Admiral Vorthak opened a secure channel to Concordia Prime. The conversation he was about to have would be the most important in galactic history. The Council could accept humanity's terms and admit that their system was flawed, or they could fight a war they couldn't win against an enemy they didn't understand. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same again. As the 2 fleets waited in tense silence, messages poured in from across known space. The confrontation between humans and the Council had become a symbol for every species that had ever dreamed of freedom. The outcome would determine whether the next 1,000 years belonged to control or to choice. The communication link between Admiral Vorthak's flagship and Concordia Prime crackled with urgency. On the holographic display, the 12 Council members appeared simultaneously, their faces showing various degrees of shock, anger, and disbelief. "Admiral," Zethkar's voice carried barely controlled rage, "explain to me how a primitive species managed to build a fleet larger than ours in 6 months. "Ambassador," Admiral Vorthak replied, keeping his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "They are no longer primitive. Whatever humanity was when we first encountered them, they have become something unprecedented." On his bridge's main display, the human fleet continued its perfect formations. Ships moved like schools of fish, each vessel responding to the others with impossible precision. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. "The Council demands immediate attack," announced Cordan of the Arcani. "We cannot appear weak before the galaxy." Respectfully, Admiral Vorthak said, "An attack would be suicide. These ships have demonstrated technology that makes our most advanced systems look ancient. They can appear anywhere, disappear at will, and coordinate with a precision that suggests capabilities we don't understand." Through the communication channel, Ambassador Sarah Chen's voice cut through the Council debate. "Council members, you're welcome to join this conversation. After all, we're discussing the future of galactic civilization." The holographic display expanded to show Sarah standing in what was clearly a human command center. Behind her, Dozens of displays showed real-time data from across the galaxy. The humans weren't just monitoring the battle. They were watching everything. "How are you accessing our secure channels?" Zethkar demanded. "The same way we've been monitoring Council communications for months," Sarah replied calmly. "When you spend centuries using the same encryption methods, newer civilizations eventually find ways around them. We've been listening to your debates about humanity since the day we were first sanctioned." The revelation sent shockwaves through the Council members. Their private discussions, their strategic planning, their internal debates, all of it had been compromised. Silnara of the Althari spoke first. "If you've been monitoring us, then you know our concerns about galactic stability. The Council system has maintained peace for 5,000 years, has it?" Sarah asked. "Or has it maintained stagnation? How many species have been held back from reaching their potential because the Council decided they weren't ready? How many civilizations have been trapped in their home systems for centuries, waiting for permission to grow?" She gestured, and the displays behind her showed star maps spanning the galaxy. Red zones marked Council-controlled space, where dozens of species remained confined to limited territories. Blue zones showed the growing areas where species had begun trading with humanity directly. "In 6 months," Sarah continued, "humanity has made contact with 47 species that the Council claimed were too primitive for open contact." Guess what? They weren't, they were just restricted by your rules. Hive mind Zaxthul of the Vextai buzzed with agitation. "Unrestricted contact leads to chaos. Young species make dangerous mistakes." "Some do," Sarah agreed. "But that's how learning works. You make mistakes, you learn from them, and you grow. The Council system doesn't prevent mistakes. It prevents growth." Admiral Vorthak watched the debate while simultaneously monitoring his tactical displays. More human ships were appearing throughout the system, not approaching for battle, but positioning themselves around every planet, every space station, every orbital facility. They weren't preparing to attack. They were demonstrating complete control of the entire solar system. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported quietly, "we're detecting massive energy buildups from the human shipyards. They're not just building more ships. They're building bigger ones." On the display, construction yards that had been hidden for months were now fully visible. Massive skeletal frameworks were taking shape, structures that dwarfed even the largest Council dreadnoughts. Zethkar saw the same displays. "What are those constructions?" "Exploration ships," Sarah replied. "Humanity is preparing to map and explore regions of the galaxy that have been declared off-limits by the Council for millennia. We're going to find out what's really out there, beyond the borders you've established." The implications hit every Council member simultaneously. For 5,000 years, they had controlled galactic civilization by controlling information. Certain regions were declared dangerous, certain species were labeled as threats, certain technologies were banned as too risky. But what if those restrictions were based more on maintaining control than on actual dangers? "You cannot simply ignore galactic law," Cordan protested. "Whose law?" Sarah asked. "The law created by 12 species who appointed themselves the rulers of everyone else? We never agreed to your authority. Humanity chooses to recognize only the laws we help create." The Keeper representative, who had remained silent throughout the crisis, finally spoke. "What you propose would end the current galactic order entirely." "Yes," Sarah said simply. "It would. The question is, what kind of order would replace it?" She manipulated the displays behind her to show a different kind of star map. Instead of rigid territorial boundaries and restricted zones, it showed networks of trade routes, communication links, and mutual defense agreements between dozens of species. Humanity proposes a galaxy based on voluntary cooperation instead of imposed authority, Sarah explained. Species work together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. Trade happens based on mutual benefit, not council permission. Exploration and research advance through shared knowledge, not restricted access. Admiral Vorthak found himself studying the proposed network with professional interest. From a military perspective, it was actually more stable than the current system. Instead of a few powerful species controlling many weaker ones, it showed a web of interconnected relationships that would be much harder to break. And if conflicts arise? Admiral Vorthak asked. They get resolved through negotiation, mediation, and if necessary, collective action by the affected species, Sarah replied. Not by a council that imposes solutions from above. Zethkar's red eyes blazed with fury. You are proposing the destruction of civilization itself. No, Sarah said firmly. We're proposing the evolution of civilization. The council system worked when the galaxy was young and chaotic. But you've held on to power long past the point where it was necessary. Now your system is what's preventing progress, not enabling it. Admiral Vorthak made a decision that would echo through galactic history. Council members, I recommend we accept the human proposal. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Half the council members began shouting objections while the others demanded explanations. Admiral, Zethkar's voice cut through the chaos. You forget your place. No, Admiral Vorthak replied calmly. I remember my duty. My duty is to protect council civilization, not council pride. This fleet cannot defeat the humans. Their technology, their coordination, their resources, all of it exceeds our capabilities. Fighting them would not just risk defeat. It would guarantee the destruction of everything we've built. He gestured toward the tactical displays showing the surrounding human ships. But more importantly, they're right. I've spent 3 centuries enforcing council law across the galaxy. I've seen dozens of species held back from their potential, not because they were dangerous, but because they were inconvenient to council control. Silnara of the Althari spoke softly. If we accept their terms, we admit that our entire system was wrong. Maybe it was, Admiral Vorthak replied. Maybe it served its purpose for a time, but that time has passed. Sarah watched the debate among the council members with something approaching sympathy. I know this is difficult, she said. No one likes to admit that their life's work might have been misguided. But you have a chance to be part of something better. The galaxy doesn't have to choose between council control and human dominance. It can choose freedom. The communication channels fell silent as each council member contemplated the end of everything they had known. Around them, the largest fleet in galactic history waited for an answer that would determine the future of every living being in known space. Finally, the Keeper representative spoke. If we accept your terms, what guarantees do we have that humanity won't simply replace the Council as the dominant power? Sarah smiled sadly. None. You'll have to trust us the same way we had to trust you when we first encountered galactic civilization. The difference is that we're offering you a choice in the matter. Admiral Vorthak looked around his bridge at officers who had served the Council faithfully for decades. They were all waiting for orders that would either preserve the old galaxy or create a new one. Council members, he said finally, I formally recommend acceptance of human terms. The age of Council dominance is ending whether we choose it or not. The question is whether it ends with negotiation or with war. The vote would be the most important in galactic history. As the Council members prepared to choose between everything they had known and everything they feared, the human fleet waited patiently in the darkness between stars. The galaxy was about to discover what freedom really meant. The final transmission came 6 hours later.